Prince? I am. Oh, it's going to get awesome. So here we go. It's a little thing I do for my mom so she can see my presentations. Is it still recording?
It's crooked.
Hope you guys
If
don't
you care,
mind. No. I mean, I don't want to have a bad picture for my mother. She'd be so upset. I mean, we all know how moms are. So. Okay, so actually Joshua, he segued into quite a few things that I was saying. First, I used to grade the FCAT. So I saw those percentile things, and you were encouraged, oh man, that's really in-depth. You can have a nice score. But, that's kind of, I thought about it.
You didn't have time to grade.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you got to get through 300 papers today. Oh, okay. But yeah, we definitely went through that. But the other thing, too, that he was saying, too, was about how companies like Pearson are coming in and they're starting to create this digital mobile content. And it's prepackaged and it's given to you and everything else, which is kind of like segueing into what I'm doing. So the whole purpose today is to harness your inner MacGyver, okay? So let's think about this. Everybody remembers what MacGyver was, or who MacGyver was, right? Anybody? Okay, cool. I was afraid there'd be like somebody that was like pre-service teacher, 19, had no idea what I was talking about. Okay, but it's all about harnessing your inner MacGyver. So at the end of this session today, you will all go from social science educators through the power of MacGyver to social science engineers, okay? Think about that and keep that in mind. And once you're social science engineers, still harnessing that power of MacGyver, you're going to be able to create mobile content for social science education, which will then defeat the purpose of Pearson and all that other fun stuff. So, let's go here. Still work, please? Stop clicking. There we go. All right, so who was MacGyver? Oh, inspirational quotes. Read them. They're going to help you motivate and captivate you to become the next social science engineer. MacGyver was easily one of the coolest television icons ever. If you disagree with that, I'm sorry. He was Lord of the Feathered Mullet. MacGyver had the knowledge and the ability to construct the most amazing tools to help him out of sticky situations. We all saw MacGyver, a genius, pure genius. If you can detonate a bomb with a paperclip, I mean, come on, the guy was great, right? But the reoccurring theme in the show was an emphasis on impromptu problem solving through engineering, so keep that in mind as well. Now, MacGyver was nothing without his trusty Swiss Army knife. We all saw that. If he didn't have that, there was no way he was getting through some of those situations, let's face it. But literally, though, he was seriously able to engineer solutions that would help him out of any sticky situation, and he really did rely on that Swiss Army knife. Now, when you MacGyver, has anybody ever MacGyvered something before?
Yeah.
Your car, right, it overheats. You see the leak, you duct tape it, you go. Everybody's been in that MacGyver situation. But it's really a verb. It's to engineer a solution with the items around you and knowledge, and hopefully having a Swiss Army knife will be there too. That helps you. But you tend to MacGyver something. This is kind of cool. I thought about all the situations that I actually MacGyvered. You tend to MacGyver something when you are in a MacGyver moment. So we call that the Mac moment. So that's kind of funny. Which is essentially where you need to engineer the right solution to get you out of a jam. Okay, so it's very important to keep that in mind as well. Now, the Mac moment has three things going on when you're in the MacGyver moment. All right? It typically requires you to have some working knowledge pertaining to the solution. If your car is overheating and you've never opened the hood before, or you know nothing about cars, chances are, as you know, that steam equals possibly leak and you're going to duct tape it, you're going to have a problem solving it. So you've got to have a little bit of background knowledge to get through the situation. Typically requires you to get your hands dirty. MacGyver never had anybody MacGyvering for him. It was always MacGyver doing that and applying that knowledge that he had. And it typically requires some sort of simple tool that can give rise to other tools, better tools that can help you out with your situation. So let's think about the MacGyver moments that we find ourselves in as social science educators, all right? Apps. How many of you are always looking for that app for your students? Oh, I'm looking for that magical app that can teach them this, that can help them with this, that can do this, this, this. And you go onto the iTunes store, you go onto the Google store, and it doesn't exist. Imagine that. Somebody did not sit there for countless hours developing an app that would work for you. I mean, it's crazy to think that would ever happen. But we all want our students to have these mobile experiences. We want our students to be able to engage the content on their cell phone, on their iPad, on their tablet, whatever, and that's very important. So we're kind of seeing like this trend where we go to look for the apps, they're not there, and what do? We're kind of left holding the bag because then we got to take something else and make it work. So this is a situation we're going to use in this presentation. You know who this is. I mean, I know it says there. It's a Wernher von Braun, father of rocket science. I kind of picked him because we were like over here near NASA, and I kind of felt it was kind of fitting, right? So I really want my students, may pretend, I really want my students to learn about Wernher von Braun, aka the father of rocket science. This is cool because it's a type of STEM, right? So we want our kids to be exposed to more heroes in science, technology, engineering, and math. It's got NASA ties, Florida history. Come on, we want our kids to have that too. They love a good World War II story. Who has never seen a kid that doesn't like a good World War II story? I mean, they're all attached to it. That's awesome. And when you think about his story about how he came over here, and he was working for the deadlines beforehand and got out an Operation Paperclip, came here and did all these wonderful things for NASA. Kind of, when the kids see that story, they're going to ask questions. Well, why? Why did he come here? What was the reasoning behind that? Why did we trust somebody like that to do all this with our country? So it really gets that higher order thinking going. So, and let's think about it. If I'm having them do this with technology, I'm going to include some videos. I'm going to include some primary source videos of any sort that I can, that they can get a visual idea of who this man was, because he was alive at a time when there was video documentation going on. And maybe I want them to fill out a worksheet to take a quiz and prepare for a test on Monday. But I want to have them do this all over the weekend. So naturally, I would go look for an app. And of course, I went on, I looked for an app. Please don't be an app, please don't be an app. And of course, there wasn't. So that's kind of cool. So what are you left to do? Well, you got to evaluate the situation. So the Mac moment in the app, we've gone through this one, I think. The idea is simple. When you go to look for the solution, when you're looking for these apps for these kids to use on their mobile devices, the solution isn't there. You got to sometimes create the solution for yourself, right? We've all been in that moment. We got to create that tool that will help the students get through the information, master it, go on with it. So just like MacGyver, everyone in this room is going to encounter a MacGyver moment. If you haven't encountered one yet in social science education, you're going to. Just like MacGyver, everyone in this room is going to need to rely on tools to get them out of sticky situations, right? And just like MacGyver, everyone in this room is going to need to understand they have to get the most out of the individual technologies that they know through this moment. And the whole point, though, is to harness your inner MacGyver. If you're in a situation and you don't know how to get out of it, there's not an app for this, and there's not this piece of technology, and I don't know how to use this, and I can't program or code my own stuff, there's still a solution, right? So let's think about that. If we want to give rise to a tool that will help us instruct students, we got to have a tool to start with, right? Because like MacGyver, he had that Swiss Army knife that gave rise to all those really cool, great tools. So let's summon our inner MacGyver. Let's become the engineer. MacGyver's Swiss Army knife. This is a mobile Swiss Army knife, okay? So, and let's think about a Swiss Army knife. Every Swiss Army knife you've ever seen, it's got the toothpick on it, it's got the little scissors, it's obviously got a knife, right? But the basic stuff, the 4 or 5 basic things are always there. Now let's think about the mobile Swiss Army knife in terms of what kind of accessories you can get on, because we've seen those small Swiss Army knives, and we've seen those big Swiss Army knives. You can get a Swiss Army knife with just about anything on it. This one has a USB thing. That's kind of cool, right? But anything you add to the Swiss Army knife as far as being, developing for mobile content, you want to make sure that it's already manufactured. Somebody else has already made it. Because if they've already made it, there's instructional tutorials to go along with it that will help you get through mastering it, which is important. You want to make sure anything you add to this, it's going to have options. Okay? It's going to give you more options. It's going to give your learner more options to provide better content. The buildability of it. Anything that you use, you want to be able to put it into whatever you're working on. So when you're building these lesson plans around mobile content, it goes in easy. It works with you instead of against you. You want it to work with integration. That's kind of tied into buildability too. And it's also tied into, can you use this technology in the grand scheme of things? Is this a technology that everybody will have access to, or is this a technology that not everybody will have access to? You want something that everybody has access to. You want something that gives you limitless possibilities, okay? If this is a technology that's old and outdated and has no use anymore, it probably won't fit into your mobile Swiss Army knife. But if it's new and it's got a lot of new things happening on it and they're constantly developing and updating it, you can even make suggestions on a lot of times and people will add in features. And you want to add stuff to your mobile Swiss Army knife that allows you to feel empowered, that makes you feel like you're building something that people will actually use. Because if you don't have that feeling when you're building something, what's the point of building it anyway? So, the basic Swiss Army knife, I touched on this. This is the mobile Swiss Army knife, and this is my basic Swiss Army knife. And this is what gives rise to mobile content. There are 3 things on here. There's PowerPoint, Hype, and web hosting. How many of you have ever set up a website before through web hosting? Cool. How many of you haven't done it because you thought it was complicated? Okay, or just how many of you have never wanted to do it anyway? It's like, no, we'll let my nephew do it. He's smart. That's it. This is the basic Swiss Army knife, though. Like the toothpick and the tweezers and the scissors and everything. These are the 3 basic things I would put on my mobile Swiss Army knife. I put those 3 things on there because if I'm creating mobile content, it'll work with HTML, or I'll get to that. It'll work with Apple, it'll work with Android, and it'll work with a desktop computer. One of the things that we find is when we look for mobile things to apply to our lessons, sometimes they're in the Apple Store, but they're not on Android's platform, or sometimes students just don't have the mobile devices. All they have access to is a computer at the library, and that's cool. And I see that sort of stuff kind of deters us from using mobile content. The idea is this, though, if you go back here and you look at the There you go. If you look at the Swiss Army knife, all three of these things on the Swiss Army knife can develop something that will work on all three of these platforms. And the common bond is HTML5. Raise your hand if you've heard of HTML5. Cool. HTML5 is basically the updated version of HTML. Okay? It allows you to do things that you couldn't do before. Animations, moving things around, transitions from things. Imagine PowerPoint. Where is it? Imagine PowerPoint fully live, ready to go, all updated on the internet, and everything works like all the transitions and everything you did. That's the basic gist of what HTML5 does. But it allows you to create content on all three of these platforms without feeling like you're alienating somebody, which is very important when you're a social science educator. You don't want any of your students to ever feel like they're alienated because they don't have the coolest devices or the latest things that the other kids have. Let's go on. I'm like standing in the wrong place, I've learned. Or there's a water bottle obstructing me.
I don't know.
There we go, cool. So back to the mobile Swiss Army knife, and you'll notice it has a Mac background, and I'll get to that as well. So the first thing, PowerPoint. Raise your hand if you can use PowerPoint. Everybody, and I was hoping that. I was hoping everybody was like a PowerPoint master, otherwise I was like, oh no, I failed everybody. No, but PowerPoint is the basis behind this, and like everything else that PowerPoint can do, you can find a new, it's not working, there you go. It's not working. Can you hit back really quick? I'm like, it's not good. Cool. And the thing about PowerPoint on that mobile Swiss Army knife is that it's good for visuals. You can create logos, you can create, you can take pictures, add them together, you can make collages, you can do anything visual with PowerPoint, and that's why PowerPoint is on that mobile Swiss Army knife. It's also good for rapid prototyping, it's also good for, the basics of web design, and it's also good for storyboarding, which is very important. There you go, cool. The next thing is web hosting, and I already asked you guys about web hosting, but web hosting is really easy to get, and it's really easy to use. A lot of web hosting places, I use GoDaddy for one of my sites that you'll see later on. They have a user interface built into it that's really easy to navigate through. They have instructional tutorials that show you how to do it. It's that point and click. We all know how to point and click, right? And you can do that, and you can basically build a website in minutes. We've all seen that before with Weebly and Jimdo and all those other free places. But when you're coming over here and you're actually building your website from scratch, the web hosting, actually uploading it using an FTP is really easy to do. It's just drag and drop. Taking all these files and folders, putting them into another thing, hit connect, boom, done, roasted, and you're all set to go. So that's another thing that you got to make sure is in the mobile Swiss Army knife. There we go, cool. And the last thing was the HTML5. Now, HTML5 is good for programming. That's the basis here. We use it for programming. Now, I'm not telling you to go out there and learn how to code HTML5, because everybody's saying that like, I don't want to learn how to do this. This is probably too complicated, too time-consuming, and everything else like that. But if there were a resource where you could take everything that you've ever created in PowerPoint, drop it over into another program, move it around, hit save as a file, and just upload it. Probably be really easy to do, something everybody can master, right? It's not complicated. And that's the cool thing about this other program, Hype. Hype is a program that allows you to take everything that you've ever created picture-wise or image-wise or anything that you've ever wanted to do in PowerPoint. You can take it, you can put it in the Hype, you can arrange it, you can attach HTML5 codes to it, and when you're all done, you have that finished product that you like. You can go ahead and you can use your mobile hosting and you can upload it to the internet so kids have access to it. And the cool thing is, because it's HTML5, everybody will have access to it. And the background, I explained that before, the Mac. Hype is for the Mac, which is cool because I see two people with Macs, so I don't have to go into the whole, I know Macs are expensive thing. Macs are expensive. The Mac I have, I got off eBay for like 200 bucks. Right, it's low-end like Mac Mini, but it does what I need it to do. It allows me to load up Hype, it allows me to put HTML5 stuff in there and upload it. That's one task, that's all I do with it. And for 200-something bucks, it was worth it, right? So investing in a Mac can be a problem. But think about this. What if you don't have the money for the Mac? What if you don't have money for the program? Because the program's like 40 or 50 bucks. What kind of solutions can we find? Collaboration, right? Collaboration is always means to the end. And you can create stuff if you want to collaborate with people. So let's think about this. If we're all MacGyvers, right? What's better than one MacGyver? 5 MacGyvers. Absolutely. Multiple MacGyvers. All right, think about that. If you have one MacGyver to save the day, what would happen if you had 1,500 MacGyvers to save the day? Everybody would be able to use that creative impulse that we all have. Everybody would be able to chip in and collaborate to work together to bring these mobile solutions, to have them come to fruition and go to your students. So it's kind of interesting too. It's something I thought about. Now, let's take all that, let's apply it, let's put it together. Now, the Mic Moment, I want to build something mobile. I want it to work. I'm applying everything I know to the Mic Moment. I have a background knowledge. I now have my Swiss Army knife. I've got PowerPoint in there. I've got Hype. I've got web hosting. I figured out how to do it. To be fair, Hype only takes about 15 or 20 minutes to learn. It's really easy to learn. There's a ton of visual tutorials on it, so it's definitely something easy. I'm going to get my hands dirty because it's the big moment, right? And I have a tool that'll give rise to other tools. I have my mobile Swiss Army knife with those three things on it. So the formula is basic. You're going to build stuff in PowerPoint. When you're done building it in PowerPoint, you're going to bring it to life in Hype. That's the whole point of Hype. Taking things from PowerPoint, putting them into Hype, bringing it to life, saving it in a file, upload it to your host, and then you're going to utilize it. You basically just send the URL out to everybody. So let's think about what's happening next. This is basically the basis for the mobile content. Right? It's something simple. How many people think that they could recreate this in PowerPoint? Let's really look at it. It's 2 pictures and a text bar, right? But it looks cool. You know, you glue it together, take a screenshot, everything's nice. And PowerPoint, like I said, is key for creating the visuals. Here we go. Hype. I don't have any visual tutorials on here. I'm actually writing them so I can put them up on the site after this so everybody has access to them. They should be up before April Fool's Day. And that's not a joke, they really should. But you will place everything from that you've created in PowerPoint into Hype and bring it to life. And then the next thing you'll do is upload it to the internet. Like I said, I use GoDaddy. I have a friend that uses this one thing that was ridiculously cheap. Web hosting at different times of the year, for reasons unknown to me, can be really cheap, and you will get normally a gig bandwidth every month. So investing in some hosting for your classroom, like MrC'sClass.com or anything. Yeah?
Can you use Hype with iPads, or does it have to be on a full-fledged Mac?
I'll show you. So I don't know if you can program, I don't know if they have a Mac or an iOS 6 version to create with. I know they have the Mac version to create with, but I don't know if they have the iOS 6 version to create with. So everybody that's got your phone out, there's always like, everybody pull your phone out, go ahead, load up this website, www.violetgecko, like the color, .com. And what I'll do is I'll pull it up here too. Yeah, if the internet works here, or if you have the internet. That's the biggest thing. I was hoping the internet would work. Yeah, the internet wouldn't work here. Anybody get it load up? Where's the internet? That might be the one thing.
It says master portfolio settings.
No, that shouldn't be it. Oh well. It's this one. That's okay. The internet's down. I'll send it out to everybody.
Got it.
Got it? What does it look like?
It said ISSS 13, enter here.
Yep.
I've got the Warner number on.
Cool. Anybody else have that? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Cool, we got a lot of people that got it. Okay, and it's not working here?
No.
Man. There we go. I hear music. Somebody got it. If you got the MacGyver music, then it works. Everybody write that down. Go look at it when you get home. Basically, Violet Gecko, what it did was it loaded up the opportunity for you to view what I made with Hype. It took like an hour to make it, and the only reason it took an hour to make it was because my Mac is slow. $200 Mac is incredibly slow. You realize that. So, just something to consider. But here's the idea, though. The mobile Swiss Army knife. These 3 things, web hosting, HTML5 with Hype, and PowerPoint. You can add anything into that, and I'm kind of sad that didn't load up, but you can add anything into that you're already using. SurveyMonkey, Edmodo, Quizlet, YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr, anything Web 2.0, Bookface if you ever watched The Office. And you can embed it into a lot of what you're doing with Hype. So everything is kind of like in this one-stop shop for your kids. So they can go home, they can load it up, they can use it, and then everything is there for them. So you can just literally send them home on the weekend and say, hey, you know, your homework this weekend? Click on here, and somebody's doing QR codes tomorrow. They had a great idea. Oh, we can put a QR code on the wall. It's like, yeah, you can do that. Have them scan the QR code, go home, do their homework, come back on Monday ready for the test. And they'll submit assignments over the weekend, too. There we go. Okay, so some thoughts really quick. Designing for mobile content is a process. Apprenticeship with experience is key above all else. If you're building something with Hype, it can be a little rough at first. But you will figure it out, and then you will be able to streamline your process, which is really cool. There are some costs associated with this process, but it is totally worth it. Go to distance. Definitely push yourself. If you're using Hype and you're using PowerPoint and you have all this other knowledge of other technologies, definitely use it. Build the best thing you can for your kids. That's the coolest thing there. Never quit on yourself either. Patience is a virtue, and you will need it at first, and once you figure it all out, it will get easier. Your mobile Swiss Army knife is going to develop with your knowledge and skills. If there's an opportunity to learn new mobile technology or any technology at that, use it. Get that opportunity. Get that information and go with it. Let's see here. The other thing I was thinking about too, somebody brought this up, if I can do all this, I can start to build my own classroom mini learning management system. I started to think about that. I was like, you really could. You can really put a ton of things into this and you can really do that, which kind of means to me that your imagination can really run wild with this. You can take PowerPoint and hype and web hosting, build this own thing of yours, you can call it your own, and use it for whatever purpose you have. And just remember, it may seem talking first, but that's okay. It's not okay, the clicker's not working. Because MacGyver still has your back when you have him a group or something, or when you have a group or something. Be creative, innovate for learners, harness your inner MacGyver, and become the social science engineer. And just remember, social science educators can become social science engineers with a little ingenuity, creativity, and critical thought. So that's all I got. That's my email if you have questions. If you guys have any questions you want to ask, I'd like to know why it didn't work. That's my question. So.